Welcome back to the Facts Matrix. Today we're setting sail for the year 1621 across stormy seas and harsh winters to uncover the real story behind the first Thanksgiving. We're not talking about the myth, but the moment that brought two vastly different worlds together for a fragile feast of survival. Our story begins in September of 1620. A small, cramped ship called the Mayflower leaves England carrying 102 passengers. We know them today as the Pilgrims, but they weren't rich explorers or swashbuckling adventurers. They were religious dissenters, English separatists, searching for the freedom to worship as they believed, far from the reach of the Church of England. For 66 brutal days, they battled the unforgiving Atlantic. When they finally sighted land, it was the wind-swept shores of Cape Cod. But their timing couldn't have been worse. Winter was closing in, fast and fierce, with little food, no shelter, and disease spreading like wildfire through their ranks. It was a season of death. Nearly half of them perished in the biting cold and relentless storms. Only about 50 survived to see the first signs of spring. And then, a turning point. One day in March, a native man walked boldly into their struggling camp. To their astonishment, he greeted them in English. His name was Samoset, and soon he brought another man who would change everything. Squanto, better known as Squanto. Squanto was from the Patuxet band of the Wampanoag Nation, people who had lived in that region for thousands of years. His own story was one of incredible tragedy and resilience. Years earlier, Squanto had been kidnapped by English sailors and taken to Europe. There, against all odds, he learned their language before finally finding a way back home. But when he returned, he found only silence. His entire village, everyone he had ever known, had been wiped out by diseases brought by earlier European visitors. Instead of turning away from these new settlers, Squanto chose to help them survive. He showed them how to plant corn in the sandy soil using fish as fertilizer, a technique they'd never seen. He taught them where to fish and hunt, and most importantly, how to navigate the complex politics of the region and make peace with the neighboring Wampanoag tribes. Through him, the Pilgrims met the great Wampanoag leader, Massasoit Ousamequin. Together with the colony's governor, William Bradford, and military leader, Miles Standish, they forged a crucial peace alliance. That fragile friendship would define the colony's early years and ensure its survival. By the fall of 1621, against all odds, the Plymouth colony had its first successful harvest. To celebrate this monumental achievement, Governor Bradford organized a feast. It wasn't just a party, it was a profound moment to give thanks for their very survival after a year filled with loss, fear, and uncertainty. Historical letters from the time tell us that the Wampanoag leader, Massasoit, arrived with about 90 of his men. They joined the roughly 50 English colonists for 3 days of food, games, and diplomacy. But you can forget the modern Thanksgiving menu. There was no pumpkin pie, no mashed potatoes, and definitely no cranberry sauce. Sugar was a rare luxury, and they had no ovens for baking. Instead, the feast was a true reflection of the land. It likely included venison brought by the Wampanoag hunters, wild fowl like ducks and geese, and an abundance of fish and shellfish from the nearby waters. Corn, beans, squash, and nuts gathered from the surrounding forests filled their plates. It was a fusion of native and English traditions, a meal built entirely from what the New World provided. For the Pilgrims, it was a moment of immense relief. It was tangible proof that they could, in fact, survive in this strange and often hostile land. For the Wampanoag, it was a strategic act of diplomacy, a way to maintain peace and assess these newcomers whose future impact they could not yet fully imagine. For 3 days, they shared food, fired muskets for sport, played games, and strengthened the alliance that had begun just months before. It was a rare moment of peace and mutual reliance. But history, as we know, didn't stay that peaceful. In the years that followed, more English ships arrived, bringing thousands of new settlers. The colonies expanded, pushing further and further into native lands. The fragile balance of power began to collapse. Within just a few decades, brutal wars broke out between native peoples and the European settlers. The Wampanoag world, like so many others across the continent, was forever and tragically changed. So where did our modern idea of Thanksgiving come from? The myth, as we know it today, was actually crafted much later. In the 1800s, America was a nation divided, heading towards civil war. Writers and politicians began searching for symbols of national unity. They looked back and romanticized that 1621 feast, polishing it into a simple, heartwarming story of harmony and hope, the birth of national gratitude. Then, during the darkest days of the Civil War in 1863, President Abraham Lincoln officially proclaimed Thanksgiving a national holiday. He urged Americans torn apart by conflict to come together with humble thanks, using the story of that first feast as a beacon of unity. The legend was born, and it has been passed down ever since. Today, we know the real story is far more complex. It's a tale of survival, but also of tragedy. It's about cooperation, but it's also a prelude to conflict. The first Thanksgiving wasn't a holiday. It was a brief, precarious moment of peace in a turbulent world, a powerful reminder that gratitude often grows directly out of hardship. So, this Thanksgiving, when we gather with our family and friends, we can remember not just the simplified legend, but the real people who lived it, the Pilgrims who endured unimaginable loss, and the Wampanoag who chose diplomacy and shared their knowledge. Their meeting changed the course of history, and their complicated, powerful story still echoes 4 centuries later. From all of us here at the Facts Matrix, we wish you a thoughtful and thankful holiday. And if you enjoyed uncovering the truth behind America's first feast, make sure to like this video and subscribe. Your support helps us keep bringing you more incredible stories each day. Well, there you have it. Thanks for joining us on this journey of the first Thanksgiving. Hope to see you again when the Facts Matrix brings you more facts about people, places, and beyond.